Creatine is one of the most popular supplements for those looking to gain muscle mass and improve athletic performance. Studies indicate that between 45% and 75% of athletes, such as weightlifters, boxers, and powerlifters, use creatine in their routines. But what actually happens to your body when you consume creatine? Is it safe to use it long-term? What effects, both positive and negative, can you expect? Today, we're going to explore what happens to your body after ingesting creatine. To begin, it's worth remembering that less than 200 years ago we didn't know exactly what creatine did. It wasn't until 1832 that French scientists were able to extract creatine from beef, which allowed us to begin to understand this common molecule, which is produced by mammals from the amino acids glycine, methionine, and arginine. In the human body, most creatine is produced in the liver, although it is also synthesized to a lesser extent in the kidneys and pancreas. Research indicates that a 150-pound man with an average build stores about 4 ounces of creatine in his body without supplementation. Of these 4 ounces, 90 to 95% is located in muscle cells, where creatine is quickly used to provide energy and improve athletic performance. The remaining 5 to 10% is distributed throughout other cells and tissues in the body, including the brain. Although the body produces about 1 to 2 grams of creatine per day, it is possible to obtain more through diet or supplements. Red meat and fish are particularly rich in creatine, since, as mentioned, most of the creatine in animals is also concentrated in their muscles. For example, a pound of beef or salmon provides about 1 to 2 grams of creatine. It is estimated that, on average, people get half of their daily creatine needs from animal foods. In the case of vegetarians and vegans who do not eat meat, creatine levels in the body tend to be lower, since, despite the internal production of 1 to 2 grams per day, the body also eliminates about 2 grams of creatine daily in the form of creatinine. Although a severe creatine deficiency is rare, reduced levels of this substance in the muscles and circulatory system can negatively impact athletic performance. On the other hand, when creatine is consumed in excess, either through supplementation or through creatine-rich foods, the most notable effect on the body is increased energy production. This is because muscle contraction requires energy, which is obtained from the breakdown of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. The amount of ATP stored in a muscle is usually so small that it only provides energy for a fraction of a second. After releasing this energy, ADP is converted to ADP, which cannot be immediately used for energy. At this point, the body uses a phosphate molecule to recycle ADP back into ATP, allowing energy to continue to be produced. When we talk about creatine and its impact on the body, most people don't know that, after being ingested, it is transformed into creatine phosphate. This compound acts as a phosphate donor for the regeneration of ATP, which is essential for energy production. In other words, creatine helps combat muscle fatigue by facilitating the energy production process. The process occurs as follows. First, creatine is ingested through food or supplements. It is then converted into creatine phosphate, which increases the amount of this compound stored in the muscles. This extra phosphate is then used to recycle ATP, allowing muscles to generate more energy for longer, with less fatigue. Thanks to this mechanism, creatine is extremely effective in improving athletic performance and muscle power. In a large meta-analysis that included 22 studies on creatine use, researchers found that it significantly increased weightlifting performance. The results showed that the group that used creatine had a 14% increase in performance compared to the placebo group. Other studies have also shown impressive results in terms of athletic performance, with short-term creatine supplementation, leading to improvements in maximal power, strength, muscle contraction, and sprint performance. These increases ranged from 5% to 15%, which may seem small, but for high-level athletes who dedicate themselves 2 years of grueling training to make even a small improvement, This increase is truly significant. And best of all, you can expect to see a similar improvement in your performance relatively quickly, especially if you use a loading phase to build up your muscle creatine stores more quickly. As these creatine stores build up, in addition to the increase in creatine phosphate levels, you also tend to retain more water in your muscles. This is because when creatine is absorbed into your muscle cells, it also draws water into those cells. While the exact mechanism behind this is not yet fully understood, it is certain that there is an increase in water retention within the muscle cells. This explains why your body weight tends to increase when you start using creatine, typically an extra 1.5 to 3 pounds after a week of creatine loading. While water retention may seem undesirable, in this context, it is beneficial. When water is retained in your muscles, it gives them a more voluminous and defined appearance, making you look more muscular. Additionally, this water retention aids muscle growth, as improved cellular hydration increases the pressure against the cell membranes and cytoskeleton of muscle cells. These cells perceive this pressure as a threat to their integrity, which can intensify anabolic signals and result in a more favorable protein turnover rate. Since muscle growth is dependent on a positive protein turnover rate I, when protein synthesis exceeds protein breakdown, creatine may play a key role in this process. When protein synthesis exceeds protein breakdown in the body, it is clear that increased cellular hydration, that is, increased water retention, may be one of the mechanisms by which creatine supplementation aids muscle growth. Research indicates that creatine supplementation may benefit muscle cross-sectional area in a variety of individuals, including recreational and elite athletes, sedentary individuals, and even the elderly. The effects on muscle mass gain are notable. For example, in a 6-week strength training study, men who supplemented with creatine gained an average of 4 pounds more muscle mass compared to those who received a placebo. While it's hard to say for sure that this additional muscle growth is directly a result of increased cellular hydration, it's undeniable that creatine contributes significantly to increased muscle mass. However, the benefits of creatine aren't limited to muscle growth. Many people don't realize that creatine also has a positive impact on cognitive function. While creatine is often associated with muscle growth, it also plays a crucial role in the brain, which stores phosphocreatine and requires large amounts of ATP to function optimally. Researchers at the University of Sydney evaluated the effects of creatine on cognitive performance and concluded that creatine supplementation provided a significant, measurable increase in brain capacity. One of the aspects assessed in the study was the participants' ability to memorize number sequences. Creatine supplementation improved the ability to remember long numbers, increasing the average from 7 digits to approximately 8.5 digits, an increase of 20%. It's worth noting that the study participants were vegetarians, which may have amplified the effects of creatine on them, since their diets typically contain less creatine. Still, it's clear that creatine plays an important role in optimal brain function, as people with a rare genetic condition that prevents natural creatine production suffer from serious cognitive impairments, including mental disabilities such as autism. Despite the benefits, it's important to note that excessive creatine intake can have some negative effects. While most people don't experience side effects from creatine use, they can occur, and it's important to discuss these potential issues. One of the most common concerns among those considering creatine supplementation is potential hair loss. This concern stems primarily from a study that indicated that 3 weeks of creatine supplementation increased levels of dihydrotestosterone DHT, the main androgen associated with male pattern baldness. But is this really a cause for concern? Based on current evidence, it's unlikely that creatine alone causes hair loss. However, this possibility cannot be completely ruled out without further study. This is because there are not enough direct studies investigating whether or not creatine causes hair loss, and there is little data on whether creatine increases DHT levels, other than this specific study. What we do know is that DAT is created from the conversion of testosterone, and if creatine increases testosterone levels, this could lead to an increase in the conversion of testosterone to DAT. So it makes sense that future studies would investigate whether creatine actually increases DAT levels. However, many studies have tested the effects of creatine on testosterone, and only a small proportion have found a significant increase when daily doses of 20 grams of creatine were administered over the course of a week. A small number of studies did observe a significant increase in testosterone. However, the majority of studies found no effect of creatine on testosterone levels. Therefore, based on the bulk of the available data, it is unlikely that creatine, by itself, causes hair loss. However, further research may change this view. If baldness is a concern for you, especially if there is a family history of it, it is something to consider when deciding whether or not to use creatine. Aside from the issue of hair loss, the most commonly reported side effects related to creatine use are associated with digestion. These effects include cramps, nausea, stomach pain, and diarrhea. These digestive issues usually occur during the loading phase, in which up to 25 grams of creatine are consumed per day to speed up the saturation process of muscle stores. However, it is important to remember that this loading phase is not mandatory. If you have digestive issues, you can choose to consume 5 grams of creatine per day for approximately 4 weeks. Once your muscle stores of creatine are full, they cannot be increased beyond that. Therefore, if you choose to load with high doses for 7 days, there is no need to continue consuming large amounts after that. Another point to consider is dehydration, which can occur with creatine use. Since creatine attracts water to muscle cells, it is not surprising that dehydration can occur, especially if your water intake is not sufficient. Therefore, it is essential to ensure that you are drinking enough water while supplementing with creatine, especially if you are doing the loading phase. The only benefit of this phase is that it increases strength, power, and body weight more quickly, which can be helpful for athletes who need an immediate physiological boost. Finally, it's worth remembering that once you start supplementing with creatine, your body will store more creatine for an extended period of time. Even after you stop taking it, your muscle creatine stores remain saturated for about 4 to 6 weeks before returning to normal levels. This should give you a good idea of what happens to your body when you supplement with creatine. It is important to note, and I say this repeatedly, that while creatine is a powerful tool in the world of natural muscle building supplements, it does not replace the need for a balanced diet and consistent training plan.